So what is happening, guys? Today I'm going to talk to you about the book Why You? 101 Interview Questions You'll Never Fear Again. This is a book by James Reed, who I believe is from, is it Reed Recruitment? For this they interviewed hundreds of their people they recruit, hundreds of recruiters that both work for them and they have worked with. In this book was actually gifted to me, and it was a very good gift. I have to say the information in this has been outstanding. So what is the book about? The book is about the 100 most common interview questions that are asked to interviewees at interviews. In this, it gives a breakdown of the most common questions and how to answer them, what to watch out for, and what the interviewer is looking for. Really opened my eyes to my own recruiting at the moment, trying to get a job in engineering, as you may know from my previous videos. In this, I have to say there was one or two things especially in it. I find a lot of the time with books you mainly take away one or two key factors of information. There's a bit of fluff and the rest is follow on from those one or two key features. The main key features in this is what to look out for and what the interviewer is actually looking for. Yes, you may have answered the question outright as it's looked on the surface, but behind each question there is an in-depth field that the interviewer is looking for. There's more checkpoints than simply he answered the question correctly, he did this, he did that. There's a load of underlying things about, for instance, you're talking about leadership, teamwork, a whole host of key factors that you need to include within your answer. Another point a lot of these questions make is don't be direct, don't be focused on answering yes or no or one sentence quips. What the interviewer is looking for is a story for nearly all questions. A story begins with situation. So in this it talks a lot about STAR. So you've got your situation, what occurred, give us a feeling of what it was to be there, what was happening. The task, so what you were set out to do, what you had been given to complete. Your action, which is what happened, what did you decide to do, how did you commit to it, how did you finish off the task, the project, the job. And then last one is result. What was the end point and what did you learn from it? Did you do well? Great, it's a good job, it looks great. If you didn't do well, what did you learn from it and what did you take going forward to make sure that never happened again? Now that is also a very strong thing to bring up at an interview. Mainly because the interviewers are not just looking for someone who's done everything right all the time. It's never once done anything wrong and is perfect all the time. Because as you improve, as you get better, as you get more out of your comfort zone, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to trip up, you're going to fail. That's how we learn, that's how we grow. But what the interviewer is looking for is how you take that end result, that failure, that trip up, and how you learn from it to become better, to grow, to make sure that never happens again. Because as you go through your career, there will be things that you've never had to face before because you've just never been exposed to it. If you've never been exposed to it, how are you expected to be brilliant at it? Well, the answer isn't in blagging your way through about how perfect you are and how you'll just never slip up. It's when you do slip up, what you do to make sure that it's only the one time. Now, the main reason I like this book is because it is written by a recruiter who owns the recruiting company Reed Recruitment. Now the main thing about recruiters is they don't get paid fixed salary a lot of the time. A lot of the time they get paid on commission. So if they bring an interviewee forward and to a client who's looking for a new potential employee is that they want to bring someone who will absolutely dominate and get the job, because a lot of the time they only get paid on commission when the person they nominate receives the job at the end of the day. So they want you to be fully prepared. They want you to know everything about the subject, because their livelihood also relies on you starting your livelihood, really. So everything in this is very honest. It's everything recruiters are looking for. All the explanations are fairly short, not just like useless short, but short and direct for every question, so you get the gist of it. It's in your head, you've memorized it, you know what to work on. You're not trying to remember paragraphs and pages of useless information and fluff when a sentence can be direct to the point. The book is split, let me get to the contents, into very good sections. So depending on the question you're getting asked, there'll be a set question from each section. And in this book, the chapters are split into every question you could get for each section. So if I quickly go through it, you've got the Fateful 15, which begins with, which is tell me about yourself, why are you applying, great strengths, greatness, weaknesses, the generic ones really. They're the ones where they need to warm up with you, they need to get to know you, the interview has just started and they want to ease you into the process. Now this isn't that the questions are going to be easy. Usually the more vague ones are the ones that are hardest to answer, because you can go in 100 different routes in talking about it. Then from there it goes on to career goal questions. So that could be, if you're an engineer, you're aiming for chartership. If you're in business, you might want to be CEO. Where do you want to take your career? Like, you're at the start. By the time you've maybe settled down or further, where do you want to be? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? When you're at school, you want to have passed your exams, let's say with A's or B's or good high grades. You go to university or college, your end goal is to come away with a degree or a qualification at the end of it. Same with your career. What do you want to get out of your career? Then it goes on to character questions. So that's name a time where you failed, name a time where you were in a difficult team situation, in a group situation, a time where you maybe had a previous boss who was very awkward to work with, or a colleague. How did you overcome that? Now this is selecting people who you may be really smart, you may know a lot of book knowledge, a lot of learned knowledge, but it's how you deal with your environment, how do you deal with the world outside yourself. You're looking for someone to bring in who isn't just a robot they'll just sit in a corner and will just blitz through the computer or paperwork 8 to 10 hours a day for the next 50 years. You're looking for someone to bring into the environment that will help push everyone else in the office or in the work area up, lift them up, get them going, create a good dynamic and an enjoyable atmosphere, really. Help push each other on, is motivated, is a team player, is a leader. All those characteristics that are ideal and will make it much more pleasurable, probably if the boss is sitting in for the interview, more pleasurable for them as well, because they know they can rely on you and they're not going to have to deal with someone when you get employed. They'll get the opportunity to work with you, not have to work with you. Right, so now we're on to competency questions. So although your employer wants someone who'll be good for the office, good for the general people environment, you still need to be good at your job at the end of the day. They still want to bring someone in who will pick up the job as simply and as quickly as possible, start making the company money. They don't want someone who's a very slow learner who they're going to take a year just to pick up what they should have picked up in a month, because at the end of the day, new employees, new graduates, they always cost the company money the first couple of months they're there. It's just the nature of it, because you just have to pick up the way the business works, and there's not much in the way of going around this. So in competency questions, they'll ask you about your subject knowledge. So for the industry, for instance, if you in engineering you go into the water industry, they'll test you on questions to do maybe with fluid dynamics, thermodynamics, materials, corrosion, solids through pipework, just a wide variety of things. It mixes your character, so how you go about solving that, your problem solving abilities, as well as your general book knowledge that you've learned maybe at university or, I don't know, on the internet. After curveball, you've got, after competency questions, you've got curveball and creativity questions. Now, really depends on the interviewer here. This could be that a lot of interviewers tend to be just as nervous as the interviewee coming in. Although because they're seen as being in a more senior position, it doesn't show as much. Or at least the interviewee doesn't notice it because they're too busy worrying about their side. So, but with some interviewers, they could either be thinking you're a little too cocky, they could be wanting to push you outside your comfort zone, they can be wanting to just have a bit of fun, or maybe they just like you because you're really good chat, and they're sick of listening to all the other robots and all the other previous interviews. So curveball questions are ones that will push you outside your comfort zones. Odd questions that you're not sure is too overly relevant. One example is, would you ever find it acceptable to watch YouTube during working hours? Now, in this day and age, this can be seen as a grey area because there's so much you can learn on YouTube. You can, for instance, you can type in any subject matter, find a very specific sliver of that matter that directly corresponds with what you're trying to learn, and in about 10 to 15 minutes you've learned it, or at least well enough so that you can continue on with your day. So a bit of chunk learning, really. But in an interview and in a structured business, it is still seen as an absolute no-go. You should be outright saying no, it is absolutely unacceptable. Primarily because YouTube is still seen as an extracurricular activity that's not work-related. Right, so the final section in this is the parting shots. Now, parting shots, this is the end of the interview. This is the time where a lot of interviewees, myself probably included in this, slip up. This is where you think the interview is finished, you're about to wrap up. You can now finally let that breath you've been holding for the last 20 minutes, half an hour out, and you're set to relax. You can chat away. The interviewer's back to being a human being again. Wrong. The parting shots is actually one of the most important parts of the interview in terms of getting getting a good feeling from the interviewer to yourself. No, sorry, the other way around. You want to leave with the interviewer going, wow, that was spectacular. That feeling of, my search is finally concluded. This is why at the end you need to keep pushing on, keep going with the questions. You've done about 20 questions before this. You've answered them spectacularly. Don't mess up at the end, because it's been shown that, especially in interviews, as well as if you think about people you've met in life, you can clearly remember when you first met them and when you last saw them. And everything in the middle is almost like a mash of responses that just give you an overall feeling. So that final answers, the way you leave the room, the way your presence is left, needs to be a positive one. Because if you have answered all the questions spectacularly, but at the end you answer with like a one-word liner, or nope, I need to get out of here, the interviewer is going to go, and when they go back to review your interview, they're not going to think about the 100 great questions and the great time they had asking them to you, and listening to your responses, they're going to think of that final response, which made them go, which will make you much more mediocre in feeling to them, and will bring you down the ranks of the people they've interviewed. You might still be at the top, but you want to make sure you're miles at the top, not just leveling above the person below you. Now for the parting shots, you want to make sure you're crisp, you're clean, you're still as fresh as when you came in. You're not completely stressed out, needing like, I need out here, I need to take a breather. You want to sit down, and then this is the part where you turn it on the interviewer. One of the questions that always gets asked is, have you got any questions for us? Always ask questions. Never just sit back and go, no, I'm alright, because that shows that you either don't care enough, you haven't prepared enough, or that you're too cocky and you think you know everything. Because let me tell you, in every business, there's not enough information on their website or on the internet that you know the ins and outs of the business and the industry, especially if you're just starting out, to not need to ask questions. It's foolish, and it makes a mockery of the interviewer's company. So you always ask questions, whether it's from what is the structure for progression in terms of the job you're going to be doing, if it's, I don't know, if it's CAD related, what pieces of software you might be using, what's the business's take on health and fitness, do they have a cycle to work scheme, for instance. Just anything that gets, you can turn it back on the interviewer and have fun with it. Make them stress the way they've made you stress the last 20 minutes. You can absolutely turn it back, and it will show that you're more of a force to be reckoned with. Like you know what you need to know, you know what you need to progress forward, and it will just blow back the interviewer. The interviewer will just be like, wow, we need to bring him on. He sounds like the type of guy who's going to make a change in this industry. And then after that, it just gives, so if you're going for, especially nowadays into the tech industry, there's 10 extra questions, and they're all deliberately technology related. So if you're a programmer, IT consultant, heck, you could probably be in any industry and still need to know those questions. And they're specifically based on technology. So they're relatively new questions because up until now there's not been enough push in tech for people to see it as important. So those 10 questions give you a rough guide on how you progress and find your way through those questions. So I would definitely recommend it if you're looking for a new job or you've got an interview coming up. Why You by James Reed, definitely one to read.